Hello everyone, welcome to Imola. The clock has struck and we wait for the cars to go out on track, ready for the session. There's the green light. And we will see everybody go out for the first time this afternoon. Alrighty. First Grand Prix here, 1980. Circuit length 4.909 kilometers. Race distance is 309.049 kilometers with 63 laps. The lap record, Lewis Hamilton, a 15.484 from Lewis Hamilton in 2020. So what we saw yesterday in FP2 was a 15.293, and we have beaten that, of course, in the practice session. We're going to look to see what we can do in the third practice. We'll hopefully be able to go quicker. And then will we be able to do what we did last year in qualifying, which was, I believe, a 14.7. So a brilliant lap there from Max Verstappen to take pole position. But about practice, we've got a 15.5 that we're looking to try and beat on the clock. Lando Norris, the first car out on track, on their way out of the pit lane very slowly to make sure that they do a practice start. Are they allowed to do a practice start this early into the session? I guess they may be. I guess they may be. And Lando Norris is on the hard tyre. So considering what they're doing right now, they are probably preparing this to be a race tyre. If not using that exact tyre, they'll be looking to run it the compound, run the compound. That would be the C4 tyre, as we've got the C5 and C6. The new C6 as the soft tyre. Mixed opinions on that one for a few drivers. I believe Lando Norris is out on track at the moment, but we just don't have them on the data for some reason. So another issue with the transponder for the drivers. Hopefully we can avoid it being too much of a problem. Now, we haven't had a full view of what the McLaren can do this weekend. Lando Norris did a fair few laps where they slowed down at the very end. They've done that many times in their career. I think especially this season they've done it quite a few times. But that's what they did do a couple of times yesterday. So they did hide the pace a little bit and we weren't able to see what the full potential was on a few occasions. But they still top the times of 1-2 for both drivers. Norris straight back into the pit lane. Still no one out on screen right now, so we don't quite know what's going on. Alright, just trying to sync up the stream a little bit really quickly. And then we'll be ready to go. And that should all be good. Still no one out on track at the moment. Just sat waiting. -21°C on the air temperature. A little bit hotter than it was yesterday. Of course, this is the morning session. It's a little bit hotter than it was yesterday afternoon, which is understandable. And obviously this won't be such a representative session compared to the race time, which I believe is at 3 or 4 p.m. depending on what time zone you're in. I'm going to double check the race time really quickly right now. It's 2 o'clock British time, so 3 o'clock local time. So it will be a few hours early, too early, and yesterday's FP2 was the best session to get a proper representation, but obviously it's a new day, so things will be different, and you're in Europe, so it can be very, very volatile. It can, of course. Just going to quickly double check what the weather will be for tomorrow. It looks like it's going to be sunny throughout, even hotter tomorrow it should be. And then later in the week they've got a moderate thunderstorm warning, so we're going to miss out on that, which I'm sure they're quite glad, because they want to have a race here in Imola. They missed out a couple of years ago, I think in 2023, due to flooding. So yeah, good to see that they are back on track and ready to go. Alright, both Aston Martins are out on track now. Lance Stroll into the hairpin. Fernando Alonso leaving the pit lane. Now, not so fun fact for Fernando Alonso is that if they don't score points this weekend, that'll be the 7 consecutive race that they haven't scored points in. That would be their worst performance ever. For a driver that's competed for as long as they have, that's pretty impressive. At the same time, it is Fernando Alonso, so you expect them to be scoring some points. They've not really had that easy of a time with this car, and this is what you get. This is what you get. It's really frustrating, but unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Hamilton, Hulkenberg out. Hamilton struggling with brakes. So did Leclerc yesterday. They would have made some changes. Let's see if they work. Well, I'll tell you what, they did make some changes. That was to the tyre pressures. They got a €5 or 5k euro fine, 5000, for altering tyre pressures illegally. I don't know. I assume it would have just been without stating that they've changed them, or after the session or before the session they weren't supposed to do it, or something. What they weren't supposed to do, they've been fined for it, and it's regarding the tyre pressures. So Ferrari definitely have to be careful. They're not in the steward's goods, but the steward's good books already this weekend. Both Aston's into the pit lane, and now Hamilton will come around the final few corners. Not much running at all. 52 minutes on the clock. Just people coming out and going back in. The two Astons also on the hard tyres, as well as Norris. The medium and the soft slightly different for the other two out on track. Hamilton is staying out on track to set a lap. Hulkenberg, of course, going quicker on this soft tyre, is, I assume, going to be going for a lap if they've gone faster than Hamilton, and they will do so. Hamilton still looking quicker than Hulkenberg, despite Hulkenberg being on that soft tyre. They go through the middle sector. Still a fair bit off, so Hulkenberg not able to keep with that Ferrari, although I believe there's some sort of thing going on, because there's no way Hulkenberg is that much slower on a soft tyre legitimately compared to Hamilton. And Hamilton goes to the top, a 16.9. Not too slow at all to set as the banker lap here in FP3. Of course, they would have got some good running yesterday and been able to figure out more or less what the car can do. An 18.005 for Nico Hulkenberg, who did go for a very slow soft tyre lap. Are they now going to go for a bit of a quicker lap now they've got one lap done? Scrub the tyres down a bit, get the shine off them, so they can work the temperature a little bit better. That's what some of the teams do. Bortoletto, their teammate, is on their way out too, also on the soft tyre. Unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure what the reasoning for this is, but it is what it is. Alright, how did it end yesterday? Well, Oscar Piastri was on top, and I believe they're also on top for FP1 as well. They were. Lando Norris P2 as well. A 1-2 for both sessions for the McLarens. That was a 15.293 for Oscar in the end, and the margins were incredibly close between the two drivers. Then it was Pierre Gasly in P3, George Russell in P4, Max Verstappen in P5 having a much better session compared to FP1, Charles Leclerc likewise in P6 ahead of Isaac Hadjar, who, despite going very, very quickly, did end the session a little bit early as they went into the gravel and got themselves beached. Yuki Tsunoda to P8, Alex Albon in P9 and Carlos Sainz following right behind. The two Williams were very, very quick in FP1. Unfortunately, their FP2 wasn't so blazing. We saw Carlos Sainz in P3 for that session, Alex Albon in P8, but still that Williams was looking pretty fast. Now it has changed, but they've got another opportunity to try and make it work. Lewis Hamilton was P11 yesterday. Oliver Behrman had a bit of a better session. Of course, Haas struggling in FP1. Then it was Franco Colapinto. Still quite a way away from their teammate in both sessions, but still not too far away from the rest of the grid. They are still in the field. Fernando Alonso P14, Liam Lawson, Bortoletto, Lance Stroll P17, Kimi Antonelli had a few issues, P18 for them, Nico Hulkenberg in P19, and Esteban Ocon at the back of the pack compared to his teammate. That's a bit of a gap indeed, 4/10 more or less. But Kimi Antonelli 1.1 seconds away from the top time, whereas George Russell is 4/10. That is quite a big margin. Not entirely in the loop of what happened to Antonelli yesterday, but I know it's not ideal. You always want to try and be close and getting some decently quick lap times in. That's your, not benchmark, but measurement of how quick you can go. You don't want to give all your cards away too early on in the weekend, but you always want to be close to your teammate. Ultimately, it is only practice, so it's more about getting yourself into a comfortable position, ready for the later session on Saturday and, of course, Sunday for the race. Now, here, Franco Colapinto out on track and up to P2, fastest first sector on the soft tyre, still behind Hamilton, who seemed to gun it pretty well on that medium tyre, it seems. They stayed out and they're continuing on this medium, not going in since they left the pit lane kind of with about 50 minutes to go, more or less. So 5 minutes or so out on track. their sector 1 was fairly slow, so they did go for a cooldown lap here. Are they going to go again, or is this their lap done? I mean, they weren't too slow in the middle sector, and they do continue. So Hamilton either blocks or was just cooling down, is now going to go again. They've got Esteban Ocon in front of them. Are they going to get blocked again, as we've seen so many times this weekend? Well, Ocon's not moved out the way until a little bit late on, but they did avoid any traffic. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we had so many moments on track where a lot of cars got in each other's way. That's not such a problem in practice. It's frustrating, of course, because a few drivers will miss out on their proper runs to get themselves ready for tomorrow, but it does show that everybody's going to have to be incredibly careful tomorrow. Where it becomes qualifying. You can get grid penalties if you block another driver, of course, if they're on a lap. If you do block another driver in qualifying as well, and it's in practice as well, and it's dangerous, you could get yourself a grid penalty. So they've got to be really, really careful in what's happening, and really got to try and work out what to do, work a system out to make sure they're not in trouble. Hadjar actually had trouble because everybody was out on track when they had that off with 6 minutes to go yesterday, and he couldn't rejoin the circuit because there were so many cars just coming along. It's a 1 minute 14 lap time, so it's not the longest circuit on the calendar, not the shortest, but not the longest circuit on the calendar, and it's very, very narrow, so there's not really much room to rejoin and not be in the way, and there is pretty much a car everywhere out on track if we see all 20 cars out on track in a practice session, in a qualifying session. They're not bunched up like they would be towards kind of a start of a race, effectively. So it's a pretty complicated situation to be in, and you really don't want to have an off. Hamilton looks to have finished their stint as they go faster again, a 0.8 for their name. Improving quite nicely. Gasly since P2 ahead of Colapinto. Half a second is their margin. Both on the soft tyres. Exactly the same representation. That seems to be where they are for the minute. Leclerc's going to split both of them. Sit right behind Gasly. But 8 tenths Lewis Hamilton has advantage over. Actually continues again. Is on that cooldown lap. So I think that will be the end of their run. But we've got Oscar Piastri looking to try and take that away immediately. They're having none of it. You see the car go quicker and quicker. You're like, you know what, I'm just going to go and beat it. 15.8 for a McLaren. That's going to be absolutely nothing. Really, will Piastri try and beat it? They're on the medium tyre. They might give it a shot. Hards for Norris. We finally see the hard tyres being run. We didn't get to see that much yesterday. The hard tyres were really kind of hidden away. I don't think anybody ran on them at all. So this is where they get their race practice kind of looked at. I think it's expected that we will see the hard tyre throughout the Grand Prix. We've got the softest possible set of tyres. The tyre allocation is the C4, C5 and C6, the soft being the C6 tyre. Because it's so soft, would we even see any soft tyres run in the race this weekend? I don't know. Maybe if we wanted to see a two-stop, they could do a soft tyre at the start of the race, but I really don't know if that's going to be the case because it's such a difficult place to overtake at. We could see maybe a medium or even a hard tyre to start off with, but I think it's going to be, for the front runners, a softer compound. For the back runners, it'll be a harder compound. Relative to one another, so probably a medium to start the Grand Prix for those that qualify in the first couple of positions. Just try and stay ahead, have the advantage, and then the hard tyres will have their time to gain a little bit later on. Now, something that happened yesterday was a lot of drivers struggling in the final 2 corners of the circuit. it seemed to be pretty tough for all the drivers to deal with. Wrestling the wheel, and of course Bortoletto did go off. They weren't really wrestling the wheel, they just had a little bit of a kind of slide with the car. It was a very weird one. So that's going to be a part of the circuit that we've got to keep an eye on. We could see a few cars in big trouble at that part of the circuit. And when I say big trouble, there's a lot of gravel. Bortoletto did find the barrier, of course. They probably went off at the most awkward possible place you could do. Anything other than that, you can probably avoid the barrier, but you might find yourself beached. And that's something that we're going to be watching out for this weekend. Other places, there are a lot of gravel. It's just throughout the circuit, to be honest, but you can see at turn 6 on the exit of the second chicane. That is a usual spot where a few drivers can go off, and it's really easy to get seriously wrong. But I think it should just be a quick trip to the gravel, and then you can return to the circuit. You will chuck some stones back onto the asphalt, which is going to be a little bit frustrating for everybody else, but if you stay in the race, you stay in the race. Turn 6, make sure you watch out for that one in the Grand Prix, of course. Now, last year, we didn't see much side-by-side racing, but we did see a very intense and anticipated battle between Verstappen and Norris to the very end, as that McLaren had really good tyre wear or tyre management throughout the race. They were incredibly quick towards the end, but they just didn't have enough to be able to make an overtake. Will we have such a close battle this weekend? I don't know. But I don't think it's going to change anything about overtaking. Of course, the cars all seem to be a lot more compact together as the regulations come to a close since 2022. And that could mean the racing is pretty close. We saw some brilliant racing in 2020 when Imola returned for the first time since a long time. But it's still going to be complicated for everyone. The Williams are on their way out. Antonelli also leaves the pit lane. Russell's still stuck in the pit lane, but they leave immediately as I speak. And we'll see everyone set a lap time within the next couple of laps. And everything will be nice and uniform. Verstappen tops the times since we last checked in on the timing sheets. It's Norris who's still up there. They beat Piastri to it, but they're incredibly close to one another. I say that, no they're not. I was looking at the wrong timing right there. Almost 2 tenths away is Norris at the moment. Both out on the medium tyres at this point in time. I think Piastri may have already come in off a different tyre and then gone back up. No, I'm completely missing that one. Unless it was Norris, I'm not entirely sure. Of course, Norris did that first lap in the session as soon as the green flag was cleared, but they didn't go for a full lap. They just went for an out lap and an in lap straight away. Hadjar goes top of the times. Purple in the first sector is enough to go purple throughout the entire lap, as Leclerc doesn't do enough to beat it. But now the top 4 are incredibly close together, not split by too much. A tenth and a half is where it's at, and Hadjar is the one to make sure everybody knows he is the top man for the next couple of minutes, of course. According to Fernando Alonso, the Ferraris are having a little bit of a field day at the moment, a Sunday drive out on track, even though it's a Saturday. They're getting in his way. As I said yesterday, we saw a lot of cars get in each other's way, and it seems to be a continuation. Just a few teams not communicating with their drivers well enough, trying to deal with the narrow track, but it's not working quite so well. We've got Russell, who seems to be going fairly quickly, a 24.3. Let's see where this puts them in the end. They'll go into the second sector about now, a 26.231 on the medium tyre. Their teammate, P14, still struggling at their home Grand Prix. They say they live about 30 minutes away. This is their real home Grand Prix. And they're not really shining as much as they maybe should be so far in this practice session. Of course, qualifying seemed to be where they had it in Miami for the sprint. The race is a little bit more tricky, but they still got to try and find a bit more to show some signs of promise. Antonelli P15, as Russell is now P7, pushing down his teammate by a position, of course, because he was at the back of the pack since. Verstappen's going fastest, 23.9. So a massive difference between Russell's first sector. The middle sector is not so different, but Max is looking to take the lead by a couple attempts, I am sure. Into the final corners they go. DRS open just before you cross the line as you go for the right kink, and there it is, a 15.130 for Max Verstappen, almost 4 tenths away from Isaac Hadjar. 25.1, a 25.5 for George Russell. So pretty big margin on a scrub tire for Verstappen. Doesn't seem to bother them being on a scrub tire. Currently, the top 7 are all within 1 second of one another. And despite Max Verstappen, the rest of the field aren't too far away. If you go a bit further down the order, though, from Tsunoda to Alonso, the gaps are pretty close together. Then it also gets incredibly close together a little bit further down as well, from Ocon up to around Sainz. The margins are tiny. George Russell complaining about some bouncing in the first sector. Bumping a little bit all over the circuit. Is that affecting their lap time? I don't know, but they've gone for a cooldown. Are they going into the pit lane? They are not. They're staying out again. They're just not going as quick as they were before. Leclerc is approaching very rapidly and looking to push quite hard, it seems. They'll go through the first chicane. Hamilton is going to be approaching as well. Let's see what they can do with the traffic. How's that one going to go? Verstappen is into the pit lane. So is Nico Hülkenberg. Russell may have just got in the way of Lewis Hamilton's first sector there. Now lots of cars out on track, a few in the pit lane. Still is a pretty busy one. Lando Norris trying to navigate their way through the traffic as they go past Stroll and Leclerc. Final couple of corners, it will come to them. They go over the detection point. And that was Liam Lawson going off the circuit for a short moment, it looks like. Yellow flag. But they do rejoin and they're all good to go. So, Liam Lawson, looking at his teammate, since going back to the Racing Bulls, not having the best of times, and this is only making Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda look like legends. Isaac Hadjar more so, effectively. So really, really good for Hadjar's career. Not ideal for Lawson's career, and they've got a few drivers, junior drivers, lined up and willing to get into a seat, of course. Pimati and Arvid Lindblad in F2 at the moment, doing a phenomenal job. I'm pretty sure, at least. 27 minutes on the clock. We've passed the halfway mark. Well into it now. Everyone has set a couple of laps at least. Some more than others. We did get basically no running effectively in the first 10 minutes. It was pretty strange to see. We do finally get to see some hard tyre running as well. Only a few cars, actually no one out on track on that hard tyre anymore. But there were a fair few testing out the hard. Piastri in the pit lane once again, since only going out once so far this session. All being done on one medium tyre. That's them in P6. Hamilton went pretty quick earlier on to set their first laps of the session. They've since improved. It looks like they're improving again, although they've actually backed off into the final sector as they allow Verstappen to go past, and they will wait a little bit longer. Now, Leclerc and Hamilton were really struggling with brake issues yesterday, both of them equally. Now, it seems to be that they've got things a little bit together. Hamilton does continue out on track once again. Lawson seems to be doing possibly a practice start, unless that's a transponder issue. Verstappen's just gone into the pit lane. Antonelli goes slow as they allow Leclerc to go through. Are they going to allow Gasly to go through? They don't. So Gasly's going to have to either back up or slow a little bit, or be stuck in the slipstream and dirty air, unless we're going to see a car into the pit lane. We do see Antonelli and Gasly into the pit lane, so Albon is allowed to run freely. Only 5 cars out on track. I counted that in my head. I knew it was 5. I still said 4. Hadjar will be across the line out of the first of the 5. Nothing really to look at too much. They are just driving the car. Into the pit lane they'll go. Hamilton went for a slower lap compared to what they did on the last lap. But they did go fairly quickly on that really quite old medium tyre right now. Leclerc around the final corner. As they're not going massively slow, but they're not going very quick either. Verstappen still tops the times since their lap time earlier on. Almost 2 cents ahead of Lando Norris. It's Isaac Hadjar on P3, Leclerc, Russell, Albon, Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda in P10. It's Behrman, Alonso, Antonelli Lawson, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon, Franco Colapinto, Gabriel Bortoletto and Nico Hulkenberg at the back of the pack. 4 tenths away from his younger teammate. 2.3 seconds away from Max Verstappen, the top time, with Bortoletto 1.953 seconds away. So that Sauber is a fair few. Next closest car is Colapinto and Ocon, of course, as I've just read that order out in the other direction. Colapinto expected to have a few teething issues as they try and get themselves prepared for this weekend. Imola is going to be their best chance for the most preparation, of course, but it's still their first race back since the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2024 for Williams, their first proper race in the Alpine car. They've got 5 races according to their contract. According to Franco Colapinto's management, they've got the rest of the season in the car. I don't know how true anything is, but it's going to be a little bit of an intense time, I'm sure. Although Colapinto does seem to feel very relaxed, as they've done it all before, and they know how it can be when you're chucked into a car. In the middle of the season, Lance Stroll leaves the pit lane, and so does Antonelli. So Isaac Hadjar blocks Carlos Sainz, I believe, for a moment. That was actually at the end of the pit lane, so not out on track, not necessarily traffic things, but pit lane things. Russell leaves the pit lane and comes out on track as well. Hajar goes back in. George Russell out on the soft tyre now, looking to go quickly as they head into the first couple of corners through turn 2, turn 3, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. Turn 1 is the first kink, turn 2 is the first major corner. Antonelli on a scrub set of medium tyres. They improved to P10. Of course, their teammate is about to push even harder and go even quicker, 0.3 quicker alone in that first sector. As expected, when you're on a C6 tyre, Oscar Piastri leaves the pit lane to try and beat Max Verstappen's time. They also go onto the soft tyre. I expect to see a fair few drivers all out on the soft tyres, if that is the pattern with Oscar and Russell, of course. Although Russell has backed off, it seems, as they leave the second sector and go into the third sector. So there won't be such a representative lap time for the British driver. Into the pit lane for George Russell. So it's Piastri that we're looking for, to see if we can find an improvement. Max Verstappen is also out on track for a set of softs. So who's going to get it? Oscar Piastri or Max Verstappen? They'll set their laps pretty close to one another. We're going to have a mini qualifying here. Of course, unless they back out. Seems to be that a lot of drivers are struggling with that C6 compound of tyre, the soft tyre that they've brought for this weekend. Again, as we saw a lot of struggles yesterday, seems to be that there's so much grip that it kind of just becomes ungrippy or something. I don't know. They're sliding around all over the place. Lando Norris leaves the pit lane as Verstappen passes them. Piastri comes towards the hairpin. They've got a few slow cars just ahead of them. They should be able to move out the way and be in quite a good position, I'm sure. Lance Stroll is going a lot slower than Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz shouldn't be passable by Piastri. In theory, Lance Stroll shouldn't be either, but they're going fairly slow as they head to the final corner. They won't be blocked. Piastri will be all good, although it seems to be that they've backed out as well. So Oscar Piastri's backed out in the middle sector. It's Max Verstappen who's backed out. I say backed out. It's actually not going too slow at all in that middle sector. They just haven't beaten their PB, that's all. They're going to cross the line. And there's Max Verstappen, who doesn't improve right there. So struggled in the final two sectors and lost it all after going purple in that first. 15.2 was their last lap. A 15.078 is their best at the moment. Almost into the 14-second margin already. Of course, last year we saw a 15.3 in practice. In qualifying, we saw a 14.746. So only a couple of tenths left, only a few tenths left to get to that pole time that we saw last year. FP3, 15.5, we're already past that. And in fact, a 5.29. Leclerc has matched that lap time from pole last year exactly, or from the fastest FP3 time. Lando Norris does go fastest in the meantime on that soft tyre. Not going their best in that middle sector, however, and not going fastest in the first. That goes to Max Verstappen, who goes fastest in the first sector still. Lots of cars are struggling to complete an entire lap on a soft tyre and going quickest on it relative to the medium, where the balance for all the cars seems to be a lot better. Gasly to P11, not so impressive compared to what they had earlier on, and only a couple of tenths ahead of their teammate, as all these cars do put on this soft tyre, as we expected earlier on, as we talked about earlier on. 13 minutes on the clock, not too long to go at all. Now lots of cars out on track. We're going to have a few bits of traffic. I'm sure a couple of drivers are going to get in the way of each other. Get ready for a few complaints, I'm sure. You can see the track map on the screen as a lot of cars are close together. Double yellow in sector 14. And the yellow has gone away immediately. Sector 14, I'm not entirely sure which part of the lap that is. So that would be in the second sector, the middle part of the second sector, I believe. I may be wrong. Now a lot of the cars do go into the pit lane. Bortoleto and Hulkenberg immediately come out. Carlos Sainz as well. almost getting to the 10-minute mark, just a couple of seconds away from it now. Antonelli is looking to improve here as they come into the final sector. Will they back out, as so many drivers have done so? Lance Stroll currently has the hards on. Will they leave the pit lane on the hards or not? Seems to be for now. Antonelli at the final corner. What's it going to be for the Italian home hero? DRS, ERS, Leclerc right in the way. And it's P4 for the homeboy. That's a pretty promising sign there for Kimi Antonelli, who's going to be a lot happier with that lap. Managing to be one of the few drivers that have really got a good edge on the soft tyre that seems to be a struggle for most. Alright, we've seen that improvement from Antonelli. Now we're going to see an improvement here from Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris goes purple in the final sector. Seems to push towards the end of the lap, but not in the first other sections, although they didn't go slow. So, just trying to keep the consistent laps in, I assume. They're doing some sort of running. They were on the radio a few moments ago, testing the front wing. Not really sure on how to work it relative to the tyres. It's Carlos Sainz into the final few corners now. And they are looking to try and get maybe ahead of Antonelli, if not ahead of Piastri, but that would be quite a difficult opportunity. No, they've just backed out in the final sector, so lots of drivers doing the same thing as we saw Lando Norris do yesterday. Lots of promise, lots of pace that we are missing out to see. But we will find out in a couple of hours' time with qualifying, of course. 7 minutes left of this session, and then we will see the cars dial it up and get ready to go quickly again. Will we see a good qualifying from the Saubers again? Could we see one of them into the next part of qualifying? It's been their target. It's been tough, but they have managed to do it a couple of times now. Will Oliver Behrman be able to get control of their qualifying woes as well? In a European circuit that they will have had some experience at compared to a few others. Although they do have experience at Bahrain. They just got that one completely wrong. Miami went absolutely terribly as well for them in qualifying. They're trying to look for some more momentum. So far, Esteban Ocon still at the back of the pack, as they were pretty low down yesterday as well. Not having the easiest of days. Alrighty. Looking at the grid one more time before we get the final few laps of the session with 5 minutes to go. Lando Norris is topping the times, Verstappen in P2, then it's Piastri, Antonelli, Sainz, Hadjar, Leclerc, Russell, Albon and Fernando Alonso in P10. That's immediately changed as Hamilton improves ahead of his former teammate to P10. 11 now Alonso, Behrman P12, it's Stroll, Lawson, Gasly, Bortoleto, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Hulkenberg and Esteban Ocon at the back of the pack. There's an Oscar Piastri just going ahead of Max Verstappen. Now, Max Verstappen still very competitive this weekend, taking a couple of poles in Saudi Arabia and, of course, in Japan as well. If they do go and get another pole position this weekend, that would be their 107th pole position. That would be equaling Lotus as the 5th most successful team considering pole positions, which is absolutely incredible. Had some pretty short stints of success. I say short stints. Pretty good stints of success with Sebastian Vettel, and now in the modern era with Max Verstappen. And that has helped them get to these. A few poles here and there in between with Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen before the kind of current regulation. I think it's 2019 was Max Verstappen's first pole position in Hungary, if I remember correctly. Lewis Hamilton went on to win that Grand Prix. Now, Lewis Hamilton commenting about possible floor damage as they've gone over the curbs. They slow down now, allow other cars to go through. What we're going to see is a few cars pushing, a few cars cooling down, and a few cars getting ready for their practice starts that we have missed out on. Last time around, we saw Gabriel Bortoleto in FP1 crush in the final 2 or 3 minutes of the session, bring out the red flag. We saw Isaac Hadjar in FP2 crush with about 6 minutes to go. All the cars had to slow down a lot. I think they went back into the pit lane, but then they came back out and they got ready for their practice start. So they have had a few practice starts already, and they're hoping that they can get some more yesterday or today, as they did miss out on a session yesterday of practice starts. Leclerc into another lap as Hamilton goes to the pit lane. And I'm sure we're going to see Hamilton leave the pit lane very, very shortly to get ready for these final opportunities and be on track for when the practice starts do come around. Now, if a few cars do go a little bit too slowly as they try and cool their car down, they could find themselves in a bit of a tricky situation where the car doesn't behave in the way they want it to. And that's when you get some silly spins and some red flags towards the end of the session. So far seems good, so we shouldn't have any issues. Bortoleto leaves the pit lane. Hadjar is not out on track at the moment. And Oliver Behrman, who's also had a few shunts and a few practice sessions, is also not out on track. So far everybody seems to be safe, but here comes Hadjar. They've got to be careful. Make sure they don't do the same things they did yesterday. Tsunoda complaining about the grip. Currently down in P17 relative to their teammate, and yeah, it's only practice, but look at all the other cars. Your teammate isn't that far away. They're a couple of positions away, and that is a huge gap. A huge gap. There needs to be something done about this, otherwise it's not going to work out for Red Bull in the long term. 1 minute left on the clock, and these are the final moments of qualifying that we have. Piastri, Leclerc likely to not get another lap in this session. Hulkenberg and Alonso will just be going around the circuit to complete what they currently have. Gasly and Ocon will be doing the same. Albon is going to get an extra lap in though, so will all the cars close to him as well. It's going to be Carlos Sainz who slows down to allow the other cars to go through. It's Lando Norris, Bortoleto, and Colapinto, who do go for a bit more of a push compared to the rest of the field. It's Behrman, who slowed down a lot. Now comes out of the pit lane, close to Sainz. They find themselves some space on the track each. Hamilton approaches behind. Carlos Sainz sits right on the entry and may have got right in the way of Lewis Hamilton. They couldn't have been in a worse position for that one. Checkered flag is called, and we'll see a few drivers cross the line. Hadjar will be the first one to take it. And that is the session done for Isaac Hadjar. No one is improving. No one will improve. No one should improve with the tyres that are being run. We've got a hard tyre for Fernando Alonso. Then we've got the mediums, of course, for Hadjar, Russell, Antonelli, and Piastri. Everyone else is on the soft tyre. So maybe, according to what I was saying earlier on, I'm completely wrong, and we're not going to get a lot of cars in the midfield starting on a kind of harder compound. We're actually going to see a fair few drivers start on the softs. That would be pretty interesting, considering they're not that stable, and a lot of drivers seem to be complaining about their grip levels. Is that a good idea? I don't know, but it's the idea that they've maybe got. We wait for the final few cars to cross the line, but as I said, I don't think we're going to get any more improvements. We see a cluster of cars cross the line. And that will be that done for them. Antonelli, Hamilton, Russell. The rest to cross the line. And then we'll read the order out. And then get ready for qualifying, where the cars dial themselves in. It's Lando Norris who tops the times in FP3, Oscar Piastri to P2, and Max Verstappen holding P3. Antonelli finds some good form in the last part of practice to P4. It's Leclerc in P5 ahead of his teammate, who's in P10, Lewis Hamilton, that is. Carlos Sainz P6, Hadjar P7, absolutely flying right now in that racing bull. We've got Russell P8, Alex Albon P9, of course Hamilton in P10. Fernando Alonso, the only one doing a practice start on a hard tyre, in P11 at the moment. And it's Behrman, Stroll, Lawson, Gasly down in P15, Bortoleto, Tsunoda, Colapinto, Hulkenberg, and Esteban Ocon at the back of the pack. Big gaps between Behrman and Ocon. Tsunoda and Verstappen, of course. Gasly and Colapinto now are a lot closer together. Gasly hasn't been able to shine as much as they did yesterday in FP1 and FP2. So interesting to see what's going on with that Alpine there. But we'll see you a little bit later for, of course, qualifying, where it will be absolutely awesome. A really important session for all of the drivers to get themselves the best position ready for Sunday's race, as it's a crazy track to get an overtake done. This is going to be an important day for everyone. Not quite Monaco-esque, but almost Monaco-esque. We'll see you a little bit later in a couple of hours. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. Of course, your top three are Lando Norris, Piastri, and Max Verstappen. Have a good one, and see you in a bit.